Our next pitch is from Iba Masood of Tara.AI from San Jose, California. Iba, come on out. Hold on, let me help here.
Thanks.
She sprained her knee, so she's not going to walk around too much. The mic is yours.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here today in Buffalo with 43North. I'm here today to talk to you about a problem. Clicker. I'm here today to talk to you about a problem, a $260 billion problem. Clicker? There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's start again. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here today in Buffalo with 43North. I'm here today to talk to you about a problem, not the clicker problem, a $260 billion problem. So you see, the software industry is adding $260 billion to the overall US economy. And so that is leading to a growth of just over 600% faster than all of US industry combined. Now, considering this pace of growth, you would think that programming would be a medium open to anyone qualified, especially since 1 out of 4 of all jobs are going to be in tech by the year 2020. However, Silicon Valley continues to hire from the same demographic of male, young candidates that have typically gone to Ivy League universities. You see, there is a pool of qualified talent that is essentially hasn't been, it isn't continually being assigned by recruiters. They're being ignored. And so what happened is, the reason why I know this is because I was one of them. So seeing my background, female, Pakistani, went to school in the Middle East, I didn't fit the dominant archetype of the programmer. And so armed with just over 7 years of experience building product for large enterprise and working with companies like McKinsey and GE, I decided to move to America with just about $500 and met my co-founder, who I met in university. He was the smartest person I met in undergrad and a roboticist by trade, Sayed. We decided to join forces and invent Tara. So meet Tara, our invention. Tara is a system that surfaces programmers that write great code. So how it works is that our algorithms basically look at the candidate's past open source repos, and then it starts to auto-assign them to projects at Fortune 500 companies, including the likes of Cisco and Ford. So here's how Cisco is using Tara to cut their development time in half. So typically teams at Cisco are building things like iOS healthcare apps, and they need to innovate very quickly. So here they select a project type, they hit scope, and then Tara gets to work. So Tara starts generating their tasks, milestones, as well as timelines. So here we see that all the tasks and milestones have already been generated. They have a team of contractors that can be assigned through the platform. And then we have all of their tasks. So there's a task management system that's built in, and they have instant communication with their contractors through the system. And so here their activity is all set. But what's really exciting is that we're seeing CIOs, product managers use Tara to essentially get contractors assigned very quickly, but then also save weeks of time in project scoping. And one thing to note is that these contractors are assigned on the basis of their past open source code, rather than their age, gender, or university pedigree. And so we're growing at just over 50% month over month. We're on pace to hit $1.2 million in annual recurring revenue this year, and our average customer spends $75,000 annually on the platform. Our customers are Fortune 500 companies, typically. They include the likes of Cisco, Ford, Orange Telecom, IBM. And on average, they're seeing contractors get assigned to these projects in as little as 24 hours versus their traditional 3-month recruiting cycle. Contractors, especially, we're seeing more women on our platform. Roughly about 38% of our contractors are females. Contractors like Dana are able to earn a sizable income through Tara, all the while raising a family. Veterans, former US Navy SEALs, as well as programmers from towns like Paducah, Kentucky, are working with these Fortune 500 companies for projects. In terms of our team, we are a team of 13 mathematicians and machine learning engineers based in San Jose, California. Between the 13 of us, we have 2 successful exits, and our advisors are enterprise sales experts that have taken companies from $1 to $100 million in annual recurring revenues. Between the time of us applying to 43North and today, last month, we closed a round of $2.1 million from investors that include the likes of Jan Thelin, the founder of Skype. And our investors have invested in the early seed rounds of companies such as Uber, Dropbox, Palantir, and Etsy. We're excited to be working with SUNY Buffalo for their open positions that include in marketing and computer science. Thank you.
Great job. Is your co-founder going to join you?
Yes, please.
Syed, come on out.
And this is our co-founder and CTO, Syed. He's joining us on stage.
Okay. Questions? First question.
Yes.
Narbi.
Great traction. Love what you're doing as well, and you're really tackling a great problem. How have you trained your neural network to really understand what the inputs and outputs are? And can you share the neural network across your different customers?
Sure. So to answer that, on a daily basis, we would be scraping over 1,500 to 2,000 projects daily, and then those projects are on multiple sources, so maybe websites that have projects on them, open source code repos, so GitHub is one of our biggest data sources. All of that data is cleaned and then classified, and then we have multiple data sources for different training sets that we have. So the neural networks are actually trained individually according to what purpose they serve. One of the major purposes of using neural networks for us is classifying code to understand what people are creating. So whether if it's a contact us page, whether it's login, it's able to classify data which GitHub usually doesn't classify, and so we add extra metadata to those and are able to automatically assign tasks, as you saw in the video, and so that's where we get all of that data from.
And so today it's working across organizations, but the idea is that over time we're also going to be using internal organizational data sets. So like for example, if they have their data set housed in platforms like Jira, then it can essentially train on their existing projects and existing teams as well. But today it's being trained on the open web.
Rodney.
Sure, kind of a two-part question.
Yeah.
Great presentation. Are you getting individual developers or dev companies as contractors? You know, big companies have suppliers that they outsource. And then as a part of that, how are you getting users or contractors on the platform? Like, what's your strategy to get, let's say, Black and Latinx, contractors and developers on the platform as well?
So to answer your first part of your question, so the way we've grown to about 50,000 contractors on our platform today, and in terms of bringing more contractors that are of diverse backgrounds, one of the things that we've noticed is typically, like, a lot of our growth is happening through word of mouth today. Then the other thing we do is, because we rank the programmers based on their scores, let's say that if you're a 6 or 7, so typically you need to be at least an 8 to be assigned to projects. If you're a 6 or 7, then the platform actually starts recommending courses or test projects that you can take so that you can improve your skills. Then the other thing that's also happened is we're basically, like, this was sort of a hack that I did, but I've been joining a lot of Facebook groups for like moms that were product managers 10 years ago, want to get back into the workforce, and then also minorities that may typically come from certain backgrounds, and they're writing great code, but they're sort of being overlooked in recruiting processes. We're also heavily basically gaining contractors from state universities as well as community colleges, and then there's also contractors that have never been to university. So one of the things we did initially to grow to our first 5,000 contractor base was we built a scraper that found the top 200 developers on GitHub, and then started to basically recommend certain projects to them. And so that was really how we grew our first 5K, and then after that we started being actively involved in communities.
Somek.
Hi. Great presentation. So I just had also a two-part question. When you look at your competitive advantage compared to other options out there, I'm specifically in sourcing developers. How do you distinguish yourself from like a Upwork's, Elance Guru? I realize they're not doing the analysis of code, but are they? I mean, are you able to guarantee some sort of advantage over them? And also, what's your business model?
Sure. So there's actually two sets of competitive advantages that we have over existing freelance platforms for contractors as well as our customers. With customers, I mean, because we're working with the likes of Fortune 500 companies, even if they are using Upwork, they're typically using Upwork for the $200 to $300 project. So specific widgets or plugins that need to be built very quickly, so they're not really using Upwork for the projects that are usually 50K and above in size because of security concerns, ID verification. Upwork doesn't have single sign-on or any sort of enterprise-related features. So one of our main areas of focus to be able to cater to enterprise was security. We wanted to make sure that we were verifying IDs, that names were accurate. So one problem that happens on Upwork is that a lot of developers that come from emerging economies tend to change their name. So I know this because I used Upwork pretty heavily, to change their names to Anglo-Saxon sounding names so that they get better jobs and higher pay. And so on our platform, people are who they say they are, and we're doing ID verification, NDAs as well. So the customer doesn't have to worry about all the paperwork, and they know that we have certain enterprise security level features. Then on the contractor side, the main differentiation is that so we did an analysis of just over 7 million contractors on Upwork. We found that the average contractor on Upwork earns $250 per project. What that means is they need to do anywhere between 50 to 80 projects per month to make any form of a sizable income. So our differentiation to these contractors is that you need to do one project on Tara to make the same income.
Yeah, great presentation. How are you scoring the developers? Is that your own kind of proprietary platform, or are you using kind of like a Codility or HackerRank or one of those companies?
Yeah, so that is proprietary and it's patent pending, but what we do is actually we work with GitHub and we get full access to their repos, so public and private, so they authorize it when they sign up. And then we actually download some of that code, not the private repos, but the public ones, along with other stats from their GitHub profile, and then we run through it, pulling the languages that they write in code and their code frequency, which is how often they would write code. And then also looking at their historical data, and then a score is assigned from 1 to 10, 5 being the least, and then 10 being the best coder that there is for that certain language. And for now, we cover frameworks like Swift, Objective-C, React Native, and React Web. And then Python and Django are the main ones we're focused on right now.
And sorry, I just remembered part of one of the questions that was asked. Is it individual developers or companies? It's individual developers on our platform. We haven't opened up to agencies or companies yet.
Todd?
So you've obviously branded yourself as a .AI business, and there's an aspect of machine learning that helps with the scoping process at an enterprise. Talk a little bit about the value that your machine learning actually provides there and how you augment the process and ultimately avoid missteps or save or drive value for the enterprise on the scoping side of things.
Well, so customers don't care if you're a machine learning company or an AI company, so you really hit the nail on the head on that end. So what we do is when we go into a company, we typically start with a pilot. There's one team that uses the platform, and they usually compare performance to their existing in-house project managers in terms of how long they take to scope a project. So what we do is we run these tests where a human project manager, let's say they spend 3 to 4 weeks scoping the project, and then when they use Tara, how many average hours are they saving per project using the scoping element. So typically, in scenarios where, let's say, the project is not part of our repository of the millions of projects that we have today, then what happens is that the system is typically able to scope about 30% of the project at the very minimum, because typically a lot of modules for projects are very similar. So let's say if you're building an iOS app, you're going to end up building certain parts of the architecture that will be very similar from one to the other. So what we've seen is a lot of product managers, which was an interesting scenario we found, is that product managers typically specialize in certain frameworks or languages. And so in a lot of cases what happens is they might be specialized in Ruby on Rails, and then they suddenly get an iOS project thrown in their lap. And at that point, they then start asking teams of developers, hey, how long do you think this will take? Oh, these were the tasks and milestones from the previous project. Where are they housed? They might be in an Excel sheet. They might be on pen and paper. It's a pretty tedious process. So if they're seeing the platform within seconds, they're able to view the tasks and milestones that are typical for their project type. And the other thing that we didn't highlight is that they can also download an SOW. So an SOW is a statement of work. It's typically very common within enterprise, and it takes them anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months to generate an SOW. So they get one through the platform pretty quickly, and they can share it with their team and even share a timeline in terms of how long the typical project will take.
Probably the last question, Sherilyn.
Okay. Follow up, IP. So you have a patent pending, is that right?
Yes.
And one already acquired patent.
Okay, and then do you have license rights assigned to you guys, or?
Yes, so our team, we're the inventors.
Okay,
so yeah.
Okay, good.
We didn't hear what your business model was, and also I'm curious if you're worried, since you're working with Fortune 500 companies, that this will cannibalize full-time jobs for real developers with benefits, et cetera.
So today, we're not seeing that trend, because what we're typically seeing is that with projects that require talent very quickly, as well as projects that require a certain level of scoping. So in terms of our business model, very simple. We charge an annual subscription to the project scoping software, to the resource allocation piece, as well as, we didn't get to go through that, but ongoing developer monitoring. And then there's an additional cost tagged on for the contractors.
Gong.
Thank you.
No, but before we finish, you did. How'd you think you did?
It was a bit wobbly because of my knee.
Yeah.
But I think I did good. Yes.
All right, we have a lot of students in the room. You talked about metadata. Would you explain to them what metadata is?
Sure.
Quickly.
So in simple terms, let's say you're listening to a song on Spotify or Apple Music. Metadata is actually the name of the artist, the album, and extra data that's attached to it, composers, lyricists. And so that's just the extra data that's attached to whatever object that you're referring to. So in our case, it's code. So whatever code you write might be the language, the lines of code written. And so in very simple terms, that is what metadata is.
Thank you. Tara.AI, everybody. Thank you very much, guys. Careful.